Most people with type 2 diabetes have been told the same thing. Watch your carbs, take this medication, come back in 90 days. And nobody ever mentioned the organ that is actually at the center of this disease, your pancreas. Because here's the counterintuitive truth that changes everything. Type 2 diabetes is not a blood sugar problem. Blood sugar is the symptom. Type 2 diabetes is an insulin resistance problem. And insulin resistance has one primary driver that almost nobody is talking about. It's not carbohydrates, it's fat. Specifically, excess fat accumulating inside your muscle and liver cells in places it was never designed to be stored. In this video, I'm going to show you 3 shifts that target that root cause directly, give your pancreas the relief it has been begging for, and restore your body's ability to process carbohydrates the way it was always designed to. Not by restricting what you eat, not by adding a medication, by removing what is actually causing the problem in the first place. And I want to warn you right now, shift number 2 is probably happening to you every single morning. It's silently worsening your fasting glucose while you sleep, and almost nobody is talking about it. If you want our free guide on how to put these 3 shifts into practice, step by step, comment guide below, completely free. Just comment the word guide below. Now, let me show you what's actually happening inside your body. Inside your pancreas, you have specialized cells called beta cells. Their entire job is to sense glucose in your bloodstream and release exactly the right amount of insulin to manage it. Think of insulin as an escort for glucose. It travels to your cells in your liver, your muscles, and other tissues and says, glucose is available in the blood. Would you like to take some inside? Metabolically healthy body. Cells say yes immediately. Glucose moves from the blood into tissue. Blood sugar comes back down. The system works exactly as designed. But here is what happens when excess fat accumulates inside muscle and liver cells. Cells that are supposed to receive insulin signal start ignoring it. Not because insulin disappeared, not because carbohydrates are the problem, but because fat has physically disrupted the cellular machinery that insulin depends on. Specifically, fatty acids enter muscle and liver cells, accumulate in lipid droplets, and begin downregulating insulin receptors. The cell stops recognizing insulin signal. Glucose stays trapped in the bloodstream. That is insulin resistance. And this is the part most people have never been told. Carbohydrates did not cause it. Dietary fat, specifically saturated fat accumulating inside the wrong tissues, is the primary driver. Scientists have known this for 100 years. Philip Randall described in 1963 how fatty acids and glucose compete for entry into cells, and that fatty acids block insulin signaling when they accumulate in muscle and liver. We call this the Randall cycle. The research was there. It was simply ignored. And here's the part that the mainstream conversation almost never reaches. Your beta cells can recover. Not in every case, not at every stage, but in millions of people with type 2 diabetes, especially those diagnosed within the last 5 to 10 years, beta cell function can return when you remove the fat overload that has been impairing the system. The DIRECT trial, published in The Lancet, type 2 diabetes was put into full remission in nearly half of participants within 1 year. No medication, just the right approach applied consistently. And I want you to hear what that looks like from someone who lived it. Susan Cope was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes with an A1C of 8.1. She was on metformin. Within 4 months of applying the Mastering Diabetes method, her A1C already dropped to 5.4, then 5.2. At 6 months, it was 4.9. She came off metformin entirely. Here is what she said in her own words.
My A1C was 8.1, and after about 4 months, it went down, and currently, after 6 months, it's down to 4.9. My weight was 148. After 6 months, I'm down to 119. And it was pretty simple. All I had to do was eat right.
That is a type 2 diabetes diagnosis reversed to well below non-diabetic range in 6 months without cutting carbohydrates by addressing the root cause. This is not a fluke. This is what happens when you address the root cause. Your pancreas is not a broken machine that needs to be managed forever. It's an exhausted organ that has been begging for relief. And the relief comes not from cutting carbs. It comes from reducing the dietary fat that caused the cellular congestion in the first place. These 3 shifts are exactly how to do that. Shift number 1, reduce dietary fat and make room for carbohydrates. This is the shift that will feel most counterintuitive if you have spent any time in the world of diabetes nutrition, because everything you've been told points in the opposite direction. But the science is clear, and it's been clear for a very long time. When you eat a diet high in fat, especially saturated fat from animal products and processed foods, that fat enters your bloodstream before glucose does. It accumulates inside muscle and liver cells. It downregulates insulin receptors. It literally blocks glucose from getting in. And then when you eat carbohydrates on top of that load, glucose has nowhere to go. It stays in the blood. Your pancreas pumps out more insulin trying to fix the problem, and your beta cells burn out faster. This is not theory. Researchers have been demonstrating this since the 1920s. In 1979, James Anderson published a study in which patients with type 2 diabetes ate a low-fat, plant-based, whole food diet while eating enough calories to prevent any weight loss. The researchers wanted to isolate fat intake as the variable. The result? Insulin requirements dropped by an average of 58%. 10 out of 20 participants were able to discontinue insulin altogether within 16 days. Not months, days. The mechanism is straightforward. Less dietary fat means less fat accumulating inside muscle and liver cells. Less fat inside those cells means insulin receptors start working again. And when insulin receptors work again, carbohydrates can go where they are supposed to go. This is why the Mastering Diabetes method does not restrict carbohydrate-rich whole foods. Fruits, starchy vegetables, legumes, and intact whole grains are not the enemy. They become a problem only when the background level of dietary fat is high enough to impair insulin signaling. Remove that fat burden, and those same foods become fuel your body can handle beautifully. Here is what a green light meal looks like in practice. Center your plate around fruits, starchy vegetables like potatoes and sweet potatoes, legumes like beans and lentils, intact whole grains like oats, rice, and quinoa, and non-starchy vegetables and leafy greens in abundance. Minimize or eliminate red light foods. Animal products including meat, poultry, fish, dairy, and eggs, refined grains, vegetable oils, and added fats. Even healthy seeming sources of fat like avocado, nuts, and seeds should be kept to small amounts rather than centerpieces of your meals. Within days of making this shift, many people see fasting glucose begin to drop. Not because they ate fewer carbohydrates, because the cellular environment that processes carbohydrates has changed. Don't know how to apply this in real life? Don't worry. Comment guide below and we'll send you free recipes to help you reverse insulin resistance. Shift number 2, use intermittent fasting to liberate stored fat from your muscle and liver. Even after changing your diet, you may still be carrying fat that has already accumulated inside your muscle and liver cells from years of previous eating. That stored intracellular fat continues to impair insulin signaling even when your incoming dietary fat is now low. Intermittent fasting accelerates the process of clearing it. Here's why. When you stop eating for an extended window, your body enters what researchers call negative calorie balance. Your muscles and liver are forced to burn through their stored fuel, including the accumulated fatty acids sitting in lipid droplets inside those cells. As those lipid droplets shrink, insulin receptors begin to regain their function. The cellular machinery that fat had been blocking starts working again. A systematic review and meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials found that intermittent fasting significantly improved fasting blood glucose, insulin, HOMA-IR, and A1C in people with metabolic dysfunction. The researchers identified the primary mechanism as improved hepatic insulin sensitivity. Specifically, the fasting state inhibits excess glucose production from the liver, which is exactly what causes stubbornly high fasting numbers in people with type 2 diabetes. And a randomized controlled trial published in the Journal of Diabetes Investigation found that 16-8 time-restricted eating in people with type 2 diabetes and obesity produced significantly greater reductions in fasting blood sugar and A1C compared to a control diet, 3 days per week over 3 months. This is not about punishment or starvation. It's about giving your muscles and liver enough uninterrupted time to burn through the stored fuel that is blocking insulin signaling. Now, here's something worth understanding about your morning fasting glucose glucose specifically. Between roughly 4 a.m. and 8 a.m., your body releases a surge of cortisol, growth hormone, and glucagon as part of its natural wake-up mechanism. Part of what this does is signal your liver to release stored glucose into the bloodstream so you have fuel ready to start the day. In a metabolically healthy person, this is handled cleanly. But when the liver is insulin resistant and loaded with intracellular fat, it overshoots. It releases more glucose than you need, and your compromised beta cells cannot put the brakes on fast enough. This is the dawn phenomenon, and it's one of the primary reasons fasting glucose stays elevated even when you have not eaten anything. The good news is that as intermittent fasting progressively reduces hepatic fat, liver insulin sensitivity improves, and that morning glucose release becomes more controlled over time. The fasting window is not just about skipping a meal. It's the mechanism through which your liver gradually recovers. Here is what the Mastering Diabetes method recommends. Start with a 16-8 daily intermittent fast. Eat your meals within an 8-hour window and fast for the remaining 16, which naturally includes sleep. The research and circadian biology both point toward the same preference. Eat earlier in the day and close the kitchen earlier in the evening. A meal eaten in the evening produces a higher and more prolonged glucose response than the same meal eaten earlier, meaning the most powerful version of 16-8 is to eat breakfast, have lunch, and close the kitchen by 4 to 6 p.m. rather than skipping breakfast and eating until 8 p.m. During your fasting window, drink water, black coffee, and plain tea only. No caloric beverages, no liquid sugar of any kind. When the low-fat whole food diet and intermittent fasting work together, you are attacking stored intracellular fat from both directions simultaneously. The diet reduces incoming fat. The fasting window burns what is already there. Shift number 3. Activate your muscles to take the load off your beta cells. After every meal you eat, glucose flows into your bloodstream. From there, it has exactly 2 places to go. Option A, your muscles, where it gets burned as fuel. Blood sugar drops, your pancreas gets a break, beta cells rest. Option B, it stays in the bloodstream. Your pancreas is forced to produce more insulin, your beta cells strain harder. Over time, A1C climbs. When you sit still after eating, that glucose defaults to option B every time. But here's the mechanism that changes everything. Your muscle cells can absorb glucose without insulin. When your muscles are actively contracting, they activate GLUT4 transporters. These are glucose channels that operate completely independently of insulin. They pull glucose directly out of your bloodstream and burn it for fuel without your pancreas needing to get involved at all. This is called contraction-mediated glucose uptake, and it's one of the most powerful physiological tools available to anyone managing blood glucose. Your beta cells rest, your blood sugar drops, your insulin sensitivity improves. A study published in Dietary found that people with type 2 diabetes who did light to moderate walking after meals had significantly lower post-meal blood sugar and better glucose control across the entire day compared to those who remained seated. And the effect did not stop when the walk stopped. Muscle insulin sensitivity stayed elevated for hours afterward. And a separate study showed that 150 minutes of brisk walking per week reduced A1C by a full percentage point within 12 weeks. 1 full point in 12 weeks from walking alone. The Mastering Diabetes method recommends a minimum of 3 hours of movement per week divided across 5 or 6 sessions. This approach keeps your insulin sensitivity elevated at all times. It's far more effective than 1 or 2 long gym sessions that temporarily boost insulin sensitivity and then leave you sedentary for days at a stretch. And the timing matters enormously. 60 minutes in the gym in the morning does not protect your pancreas from the glucose flood that comes at dinner 6 hours later, but a 10-minute walk after dinner can intercept that glucose at exactly the moment your beta cells would otherwise be forced to handle it alone. This is exactly what Lenny did. She was 66, had been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and her new doctor did not believe lifestyle alone would be enough. Lenny refused medication. She applied all 3 of these shifts. She moved to a low-fat, whole food, plant-based diet, used intermittent fasting, and built a consistent daily movement routine from scratch. 1 year later, her A1C went from 6.4 to 5.3, fully out of the diabetic range. She lost 96 pounds. Her liver enzymes normalized completely. Her neuropathy symptoms disappeared. And here is what she had to say.
My A1C was 6.4 and it is now 5.3. My weight was at 266 pounds and now it's about 170. I feel like I have given my body a chance now to age normally.
That's what happens when the root cause is addressed, not managed, addressed. Here is your action step for shift 3. After every meal, take a 10 to 15 minute walk. Not a run, not a workout, a walk. Slow is perfectly fine. If you can only do one meal, make it dinner. This is when your glucose load is highest and when your beta cells need the most relief. Let's zoom out because the most powerful message here is bigger than any single shift. Reducing dietary fat directly decreases the accumulation of intracellular lipid in muscle and liver cells, which is the primary cause of insulin resistance. When less fat enters those cells, insulin receptors begin functioning again, and carbohydrate-rich whole foods can be metabolized efficiently. Intermittent fasting accelerates the liberation of stored fat from inside those same cells, burning down the lipid droplets that were already there and restoring insulin sensitivity from the inside out. Post-meal movement activates contraction-mediated glucose uptake, opening an insulin-independent pathway so that glucose has somewhere to go even while insulin signaling is still recovering. None of these shifts require you to fear food. None of them require you to cut carbohydrates. In fact, as insulin sensitivity returns, you will find that the same carbohydrate-rich whole foods that used to spike you start landing more gently. Fruit, potatoes, beans, rice, oats, not because the foods changed, because your cells changed. That is the mastering diabetes approach. Not carbohydrate restriction, not symptom management, insulin resistance reversal at the root cause. Your beta cells are not finished. They have been overloaded. They have been begging for relief. And every signal they sent, the fatigue, the brain fog, belly fat, the afternoon crashes, was either ignored or answered with a prescription. Susan went from an A1C of 8.1 to 4.9 and came off metformin entirely. Lenny went from 6.4 to 5.3 and lost 96 pounds. Both were told by their doctors that it probably would not work. Both proved otherwise because physiology does not care about skepticism. Physiology responds to the right conditions. Give your cells the right conditions. Remove the fat burden, use the fasting window, activate the muscle, and watch what your body is capable of when it finally gets what it actually needs. If you want our free step-by-step guide to putting all 3 of these shifts into practice today, comment guide below. If this video helped you see your body differently, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who just told you to watch their carbs and come back in 90 days because they deserve to know that there is a deeper answer. Until next time, keep those carbs high and that A1C low.